You're watching Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV. And now, here's two guys who help light the menorah in downtown St. Andrews every year, Evan and Joe.
I'm Joe Ticotsky down in New Haven, Connecticut.
And I'm Evan McFarlane here in St. Andrews, New Brunswick.
And this is the 47th episode of Mick and T Sports Report. It's our combination year-end and holiday episode. We have a great winter background on the screen, courtesy of Doug and the crew over at W4C Graphics. Gotten any snow yet up there?
That's a good background. We got snow for like half a day, but honestly, it was like 10 degrees outside yesterday. It's all over the place. Everybody's sick. It gets warm one day and then it's -6 the next day. And I don't know. I want snow on December 23rd to December 26th, and then I want spring.
There you go. It was Mark mentioned in the opening, we both enjoy lighting the menorah in downtown St. Andrews. Have you ever lit a menorah?
I have not, but that would be the one thing that isn't lit up in downtown St. Andrews. It's awesome down there right now with all the lights.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I coached up there, and I used to do the weekly basketball clinic at the local elementary school. I'll never forget one time a kid said to me, "Aren't you the guy that celebrates Hanukkah?" I just had to laugh. It was classic. On to a quick music spotlight. We'll keep it simple since the year's about to end. We suggest you just download Auld Lang Syne by none other than Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians. It was originally a Scottish folk song. Guy and his band originally performed it on New Year's Eve, 1929, at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York.
Did you celebrate your 10th birthday that year?
I was in the audience. The song says, "Drink a cup of kindness." So Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians. Well, coming up next, as the old saying goes, the horses are on the track. We interview a man who famously announces harness races. You're watching the holiday and year-end episode of Mick and T Sports Report here on CHCO-TV in St. Andrews. Welcome back to Mick and T Sports Report here on CHCO-TV. As we try to always give you a variety of guests here on the show, we add to our illustrious list with our first guest, who's a legendary track announcer for harness racing at Summerside and Charlottetown Raceways on Prince Edward Island. Throughout his amazing career, he's called at least one race at over 40 different Canadian tracks. So as we come down the stretch for a 2022 season here on Mick and T Sports Report from up on Prince Edward Island, let's welcome in Vance Cameron. Vance, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Joe.
Great. You were born in Summerside, PEI, where you currently live. Now, I know every career has a unique story, so give us some insight into yours. How did you become a race caller?
Well, back in the mid-'60s, we lived on a little street in Summerside called West Street, which backed onto the racetrack. There was only a field between that and our house. And back in those days, a young fella couldn't go to the races unless he was accompanied by an adult. So we had to find some ways to sneak in, which we could do quite regular. And that was the beginning of it, Joe.
Okay. But how did it go from there to that you actually were calling races?
Well, when I went to the racetrack as a very young man, I just wasn't captivated by the race caller. So as years went by, the race caller was getting set to retire. I had a sister, Lynn, who trained horses at the local track, and I kind of have begged her to see the management to give me a chance, and the management agreed. I went up, called some races, and when Mr. Waters, who was the race announcer at the time, retired, they decided to put me behind the microphone, and that was a little more than 45 years ago.
Amazing. Evan.
Yeah, so just for reference for some of our viewers, maybe just give us an insight of how far away is the booth from where you call the races to the track itself, and maybe give us a couple of the factors that you deal with on a regular basis that make it a little bit tougher to call races.
Well, I like to call myself a half-mile track guy because I don't use binoculars. I do have a pair at both racetracks. I do have to pick them up when it's extreme fog or heavy rain because all the drivers after one drive, they're full of mud. You can't make out their colors. So it's just a real-time nightmare. Like, I've called on the 5/8. I've called on a 11/16, which I believe is the only configuration for that one track out in Calgary, Alberta. I need binoculars as soon as we leave the half-mile racetracks. Binoculars come with me, and they play a big part.
All right. Now, in terms of your prep for the race, how much do you do in terms of either memorizing horses or jockeys' names that are tough?
To be quite frank, Joe, I don't do a whole lot of preparation. Down here in Prince Edward Island, after about a month of racing, you pretty much have the same group of horses week in, week out, with the exception of the stake races when the new names come to town, but not a whole lot of preparation. I will take a look at the program a couple of days out, and just there's a lot of winging it on my end.
Okay. Now, the big race up there, explain to our viewers first what the Gold Cup and Saucer Parade is, and then what the Gold Cup and Saucer Race is.
Well, the Gold Cup and Saucer Parade, for anybody who's not familiar with Canada, from Montreal, which is one of the largest cities in Canada, down to Charlottetown, which is probably the smallest, we have the Gold Cup and Saucer Parade on a Friday morning. It all started back in 1960. Of course, COVID-19 put a damper on that for a couple of seasons, but it came back this year, and as big as ever. It's the biggest parade east of Montreal. Actually, the government makes it a holiday on that Friday.
Okay, and then the race, so this is in late August?
Yeah, it's usually the third Saturday in August every year. We race the Gold Cup and Saucer. Now, I'm going to be a little biased, Joe, for sure, because I think the pageantry on this race, there's nothing in harness racing that can compare to it. We have 8 ambassadors. They draw their horses' names. They come into the track under a spotlight. The track is completely darkened. Then we bring our horses onto the track, and we have what we call the Island Hymn. We have a young lady sing that as the horses come down in front of the grandstand in darkness, with the exception of 2 spotlights. Then they leave, and then in individual order, the spotlight will pick them up, and I'll give every information on the horse, driver, trainer, as we do each individual horse singly on the post parade.
All right, and tell him, what time does that race start? Because I read it and I thought it was a misprint.
Well, the race, we always take it to the closest to midnight as we possibly can. This year, it was probably 12:15 at least when they went to the gate. Now, the Canadian Pari-Mutuel Agency says you can't carry a race card from one day into the next. So that's how the 12 o'clock post time came along. But as both of you know, that rules are made to be broken or bent a little bit. So we do that on Gold Cup and Saucer night. And this year, guys, we had our biggest Gold Cup and Saucer Pari-Mutuel handle in the history of the racetrack, dating back to 1888 on the race itself, which is extremely large numbers down here, like uncomparable to anything on the East Coast. We bet around 180,000 on the race itself. We bet around 420 on the program. Those are numbers unheard of on East Coast racing.
And can you bet on the race online also?
Oh yes, that's our big percentage of our money, Joe, is coming from online. Like we have wonderful attendance during the tourist season here in PEI, but in the spring, fall, winter, it's just it's our local talent there. But without the online stream, and we do have a big time online following, the numbers would be quite low.
Okay, I'm making a note now for the third Saturday in August. It's right in my book. Evan, you have another question?
Well, I had a couple comments there. I was going to say I could see your ears perk up when you knew you could get on DraftKings for that. And the other thing about breaking rules is that the only rule that's going to be broken if Joe's going to watch that race is his bedtime. So that's about 4.5 hours past when he goes to bed.
I'll take a nap and set my alarm for 11:30.
Absolutely. Miss it, because I'll guarantee you'll not see anything like it.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm over there quite a bit, so maybe that'll be one of the weekends that I decide to come over. Vance, what was the first race you ever called, and how many more years do you plan on going at this?
I started this gig in October 28, 1977. The first horse that won for me was a trotting horse by the name of Ziza Tata, trotted a mile in 2:19 and 4. I'm into my 46th year. I would like to get 50 years in the booth, and if I can get that far, God willing, if I put 3 more in, that will give me race calls in 7 separate decades.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, is it tough? And I don't know if you would even know this. Is it tougher being a jockey riding a thoroughbred race versus harness racing?
Well, you know, Joe, like that's a tough one for me to answer. Thoroughbreds, they practically don't even exist here on Canada's East Coast. There's no thoroughbred racing now until you get to Toronto, which is, you know, you're talking 2,000 kilometers away or 1,800 kilometers away. So I don't have much of a judgment on the jockey end of it, but the drivers down here on the half-mile track, they play a big-time role. I mean, your horses have to be pretty good, gifted, gated. And we have some fine talent down here in the race bike, as in drivers. We have a young fellow down here by the name of Mark Campbell. He's approaching 3,000 wins, all of them here on the East Coast. He was the quickest guy to 2,000. We have another gentleman down here called Jill Berrio. He's so talented. A few years back, I deemed him as the Maritime Magic Man because he's just incredible to watch. And he's got some age on him now, too, but age is not setting in with this man at all. He can still get them around track, and he can still get them to the winner's circle. We have a lot of talented drivers here on the East Coast.
Have they ever gotten you in there to ride one?
Well, to tell you the truth, I have done that a little bit. The racing officials used to have a race where they would raise money for the Horsemen's Benevolent Fund, and they usually invited me to drive them. And let me say this now, I don't mean to blow my own horn, but I kick their butt on a regular basis, and I have the pictures to prove it.
Well, we should do a celebrity match where the 3 of us go head to head.
Absolutely. Come on down here to the Prince Edward Island. We'll find the stock and we'll go around.
I think I'm about 3.5 feet taller than most jockeys. That'd be interesting.
Oh, yeah? All right. Well, as we finish up the segment and go to break, we have a little treat for our viewers. We're going to play some clips of Vance in action calling some races. But before we go to that, Vance, I know you have a signature catchphrase. So before we play the clips, how about giving our viewers a live version?
Boom. Just like that.
That is awesome. Boom. Just like that. That's good stuff. Well, he's legendary track announcer Vance Cameron. Vance, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me on. It's been a real treat for me.
So as we head to break, enjoy the clips, and you are watching Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV.
Campbell makes front, aboard Ericash Hanover! Quarter pole leading tonight in trial 1, pacing from second towards the inside Astor. Boom! Just like that, 27-1.
It's time for another edition of Small Town Spotlight here on Mick and T Sports Report. This time around, we head to the only bordering province of New Brunswick that is not considered part of Atlantic Canada, and that would be the province of Quebec. And we head to the city of Becancour, located 90 minutes north of Montreal and 90 minutes south of Quebec City, located on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River. And located in Becancour is radio station CKBN known to listeners as Via 90.5. To tell us about the station and the area, let's welcome in the station's production and broadcasting supervisor, Phillippe St. Pierre. From the studios of Via 90.5, Phillippe, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Joe.
All right. If I was listening to your station, tell me a little bit about the types of music I'd hear.
Well, you will definitely hear some of the biggest hits from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. We do play the most recent hits, but in a more slow-paced rotation. We do add them to the playlist, but we truly love the old songs, the songs that gonna make, oh my God, there's one of my memories. I think about this when I hear that song. And the lost songs, you know, those songs that you don't hear on any other radio station, we got them here. You could hear country music, rock music, metal. You can hear metal during the night. You could hear jazz, blues. We're not affiliated to any other radio station, so we could basically do whatever we want with our music, as long as we respect the rotation from the CRTC and everything. So there is a lot of things you could hear.
I probably have some of those hits from the 70s on 45 records. You know, that's before your time.
Yeah.
But now your station does broadcast all in French.
Yeah.
So for those Francophone viewers we may have, what are some things they'd hear on the station in addition to music?
Well, they will definitely hear some local news. This is one of the things that we are the most proud of. And we care about this because we are the only radio station in the area, because on the south shore of the St. Lawrence, we are the only radio station that talk about and talk to the people from here. Well, yes, there are other big radio stations on the North Shore, but they don't really talk about what's happening here. They will talk about it sometimes when it impacts the North Shore. But when it impacts the South Shore, we are the true radio station that talks about it. So they definitely hear about news. They will hear about what's happening on the cultural scene, showbiz all around Quebec, and sports. We do sports. We have some major teams of baseball in the area on the North Shore, and we have a ECHL team in Trois-Rivières. So it's about 15 minutes away, and we talk about them. And yeah, you will hear some volunteer talent on here. We do have some of those, and one of them, Ghislain, he's here from the first show of the opening of a station like 16 years ago.
Oh, wow.
He's still here, and he's amazing. He's on Wednesday night, 9 p.m. He's an amazing guy with a deep voice, you know. But when he's singing, he's a high-pitched singer. I don't understand why. But, he's amazing, so you have to listen to him.
Man. Now, Becancour is located about halfway between Montreal and Quebec City.
Yeah.
So when locals want to get away for the day, which one do they typically favor, Montreal or Quebec City? I don't want to start a little war there.
That's a good one. For day-to-day basis, they go to Trois-Rivières if they really need something that they can find on the South Shore in Becancour or the area around. But for just enjoying a weekend, I wouldn't know. Maybe it's 50-50. I mean, Montreal has great things. It's a little bit busier, the streets and everything. Maybe you want to avoid the downtown Montreal with all the road construction and everything, because it's always in construction, you know. So I would say, yeah, Quebec. I would pick Quebec before Montreal, but for the restaurants and the variety of the restaurants, I would go in Montreal. So, you know, I'm kind of heartbroken because here it's 50-50 for me, I think. I
actually have a cousin that lives in Montreal that reviews restaurants in the city. So maybe I'll have her give you a few recommendations.
If you need some help, I'm going to be available for sure.
Now, any shot the Nordiques are ever going to come back for hockey?
Oh, God, this is another subject, right? I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. All right.
No, but I wish they could come back. They have the building, but well, Mr. Bettman is saying something else.
Yeah, they used to be a rival of our Hartford Whalers back in the old days. But all right, well, to finish up, I always ask our guests about a local restaurant. So tell me about this little poutine joint that's been around since 1946.
Yeah.
It's only open in the spring and summer. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's we call it in French la roulotte à patate in Gentilly, which is a little poutine joint, as you say. It's very cute, and it is one of, if it's not the best, it's one of the best place to eat poutine and all those tasty foods from Quebec. Actually, we did a tour of those poutine joints here in the area, and on the North Shore, we visited 8 of them in 2 days. So I had to eat 4 times per day poutine and all those things that their places wanted us to taste, and I had to talk about that. And you can see those little tour on our Facebook page. And on those 8, I would say that the la roulotte à patate in Gentilly is the best fries ever. You know it's fresh. You know it's peeled, cut, cooked on demand. So you cannot be fresher than that. And then you had those cheese curds are amazing, and they have some original recipe with chili on it. It is a special recipe from an artist that is based in Gentilly that gave his recipe to the lady that owns the place, and it is something else. You have to try that. If you come here in Becancour, you have to go in Gentilly, which is a little area from the city, and since 1946 it's been awesome. So yeah. So
their website says that the little trailer was first dragged to the center of town by horses in 1946. And I looked online on their menu. A small order of regular poutine is $7.60, which is only about $5.50 in U.S. funds, which is pretty cheap. And then I did see that Pepe's chili poutine, but which you're talking about. But I think based on advice from my cardiologist and gastro doctor, I may pass on that. But
no, it's not that bad. It's really tasty. It's surprisingly it's not that too much of a poutine.
Okay, not
light.
Too
It's very light. It's very light. And Julie, the owner, is proud of his eco-responsible side of it. So there's zero waste. It's all reusable silverware and dishes and plates. So she made sure that she improved that side. So she's pretty much zero waste by this year. So I'm very proud of that too. So yeah, we've got some good places to eat. There's a lot more years to discover if you come in town.
Excellent. Well, let's get back on track here. I really do appreciate, as a fan of radio, that you guys are still involved with the local scene. I was talking to you off air about how hard it is in a lot of places to even find out what the weather's like, traffic, and just to sort of get that non-corporate feel when you're especially when you're away from home, you want to find out about the place. So props to you guys on that. He is Phillippe St. Pierre, and he is the production and broadcasting supervisor at Via 90.5, a great FM radio station located in Becancour, Quebec. And you can listen online anytime at Via 905.fm. And there's loads of radio apps out there that you can also look it up. And Phillippe, before we leave, I'm going to try something in French. Let me know if you can figure out what I said. Merci d'être dans l'émission.
Merci d'être dans l'émission. Thanks for being in the show.
I passed the test. That's impressive. And he did not even have it written down. I didn't tell him what I was going to say.
Not at all.
Well, Phillippe, thanks so much for being on the show, and hopefully a lot of our viewers will take a listen to the station.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we're back, and you know what, Joe? Le Français, très bien. Good work there at the end, tossing that in. I didn't know you had it in you. But Another random T-shirt. Arctic Outpost Radio.
Yeah, it's an AM radio station from Norway, and yes, I do have too much free time. So, all right, let's go right to the shout out. I'm going to give a shout out to you and your Sir James Dunn Academy basketball team for winning the Danielle Park Memorial Basketball Tournament on Grand Manan Island earlier this month. Give us a quick recap.
Yeah, thanks. That's all. It's always a good tournament for us. One of the first ones of the year that we always go to, and it's a perfect time for us to work on team bonding and kind of bringing the team together. Not a better place to go than Grand Manan to do that. It's such a hospital community. Like from the moment you get there, they just make sure that everybody's set up with places to stay and food, and they look after you. And yeah, our kids, they played hard. We've been practicing really hard for the last couple of weeks, pulling stuff together, and it was nice to see it click, and hopefully we can ride a bit of momentum. But yeah, like I said, just shout out to Amanda Russell and her team over there for taking great care of us. We had to stay an extra night because of the weather. Ferry got docked, we couldn't cross, and they had us up in a church hall. They even came over, gave us some cookies from a dinner that they had, and just checked in and made sure that everybody was doing all right. So I can't say enough about the hospitality over there. Packed gym, it was a fun environment, and we always look forward to playing in Grand Manan.
Good stuff. All right, well, that is it for episode 47 of Mick and T Sports Report, our 17th and final show of the calendar year. I'm Joe in New Haven.
And I'm Evan here in St. Andrews.
Thanks to Patrick Watt and Florence Mitchell for producing and editing a show that was hotter in 2022 than Chunky Loafers.
Oh.
Yeah, now I'm a fashion maven.
There we go.
So until next time, we'll be back with our first show of 2023. This is Mick and T Sports Report on CHCO-TV in St. Andrews. Evan, have a happy and peaceful New Year.
Thanks, man. You too. Cheers.
Happy New Year.